Hello, welcome to the Adam Fitch Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Fitch. You should know that by the name of the podcast and the fact that this is the 17th episode, I think it is now. Kind of getting lost now. I'm getting into the larger numbers. When it's like 1, 2, and 3, it's very easy to stay on top of. But now I'm just, I don't know, I'm a bit lost, especially with everything going on at the moment. But hey-ho, we keep moving forward and such. So today I'm joined by a special guest. I say that every time because if they're on my podcast and they are special in some way, I'm not going to get on any old person who doesn't provide anything that I can't. And actually is quite a big gap in what I know. So fortunately, there's a lot of people I can get on. So today I'm joined by Erin Ashley Simon. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. You know, like you said, it's quite a period of time that we're in, but just to see all of us come together and be a part of content with one another, I think is tremendous.
I have to alert the watchers and listeners to something, which I said to you before we started, is that it is weird being on this side of things when I'm speaking to somebody who does this for a living. Like you are really great at talking and presenting and such, and I'm good behind a keyboard and kind of getting better in front of a microphone and a webcam, but it's still very like foreign to me. So I'm not gonna say I'm scared. I like challenges and such, but like yeah, there's definitely a bit of pressure there for me to do a good job because of how good of a job you do.
Oh, listen, you're going to do a phenomenal job. There's no pressure at all. I'm off the clock too, so if that helps.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you're gonna let your standards drop now?
Yeah. I'm going to be regular Erin right now.
Well, that's what we want anyway. That's what we want. So something I've been asking guests to do for maybe 4 or 5 episodes now is to kind of define or explain how they define themselves, because I don't know. It's hard for me, for example, to say that I'm a content creator, and now that I'm doing video and podcast stuff, because I've been creating written content for a long time, and I kind of find it hard to box myself in, and I assume that's the same for other people, especially when they're doing quite a few different things, and I've done over the past few years. So what would you say you are, in a sense? Are you a journalist, a host, a presenter? Where do you fit into things, or do you prefer not to do that at all?
No, I mean, for contextual purposes, I don't mind saying that, like, you know, I'm a broadcaster, right?
Right.
But I also am someone that I like to say I'm a storyteller. I think part of my job and responsibility, especially within esports and gaming, is to help to tell the appropriate stories, whether it's individual stories or whether it's the story of what is happening in the industry. And so I think from a business perspective and just job perspective, that's how I find myself. But from a personal standpoint, I'm Erin. I'm a fun, a non-judgmental, caring individual who just enjoys to see the happiness in others and to see other people thrive and to grow. I mean, that's what drives me towards, especially for Cheddar Esports, that it's what drives me towards bringing people onto our show, is
Right.
to give them an opportunity to shine and let them have that platform to shine and to showcase their knowledge in this space and everything. You know, Cheddar Esports may not be like the biggest show in the world, but there are enough people that pay attention. So that's the kind of person I am. I'm always trying to figure out, like, how can I help others?
You're basically just described the exact opposite of how I have been for my whole 25 years of existence. Like, well, I'm starting to see the light now, but like for many years I was fueled off of hate and doing better than others instead of everyone working together to get to a certain place. It's like, no, like, you're better than me, I'm going to work until I'm better than you, like, blah, blah, blah. So like the exact opposite of me. So it could create quite an interesting kind of parallel here. But so I know we've actually, I'm pretty sure we've got a bit of a similarity in how we started in like this whole content thing. So can you kind of talk through it a bit? Because did you start your own kind of venture, your own blog or channel or something, and create things off your own back?
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to condense this as much as
Yeah.
possible. This is about 10 years, right? So I started when I was 16, 17 years old, and I was a top soccer player in New Jersey. And because of that, with so many tournaments, I didn't have time to go out to Cancun with friends. I didn't have time to go do things that certain other friends were doing. So when I was home, I was training. I obviously played video games because around that time, I think it was when Xbox Live was like really popping. So I was like, oh yeah, I got to play with people online. then also I created a website later on called A Box of Mess, and Mess stands for Music, Entertainment, Sports, and Style. And I wanted it to be something that was an extensive blog that covered all these different facets that I was interested in. And I started off with just covering traditional sports, and more specifically basketball and high school basketball.
Yeah.
And with that, it kind of blew up. Like I was getting interviews with some of the top prospects in here in the United States, and they were telling me like what schools were interested in them and other stuff. I mean, granted, I was a young girl and probably around the same age as them. So, boys are boys, right? But they also respected me because of the work that I put in and just how I presented myself. And so it got to the point where people from like ESPN, CBS Sports, Fox Sports were reading my blog and reading certain interviews. And that's the start, the beginning of my content journey. I mean, I had some ups and downs, and I made mistakes along the way. Like, I'm a kid, so at that time, so of course I'm gonna make some mistakes. But that started my journey, and that also made me want to change my major in college to journalism. And then I originally was going to do kinesiology and do sports medicine,
right?
And then I switched it to journalism. And so from there, the journey continued where I was still doing content for myself. I still had a blog. And also I had a YouTube video or YouTube channel that I would interview different people for. And from there, it went from then eventually I was doing internships for a company called Dow Jones, and then eventually the Wall Street Journal. Then I got an opportunity with the Wall Street Journal. I did work for my university, my alma mater, University of Kentucky, because we had a really great basketball program. So I developed a lot of relationships there. And no matter what, even when I was in college, high school, after, I was still creating content. Then eventually I moved into music media, was interviewing rappers and artists and stuff like that. And then I landed a job at Diddy or Puff Daddy, depending on what area you come from, his television network, Revolt TV.
Yeah.
And I worked my way up to the point where I was a producer and producing content for the TV network, as well as digital. And so, and then eventually I was a part of a company. Then I did content development, content strategy for them. I created a series called Inner Circle, and that series by second episode had well over 3 million views. And so since I was 16, 17, which is about 10, 11 years, going on 28 now, I've been creating content nonstop. And I've just figured out along the way just how to create content that resonates with people and create content that people are looking for. And it's been interesting during that process. But also it's interesting too, because now I've been creating content so much for other people. I've now had to during this time of self-quarantine, I'm figuring out how do I create content for myself.
Yeah.
Which has been an interesting approach and journey. But I've been, my career or I guess passion in content started when I was 16, 17 years old. And it's been going for 10, 11 years.
Blimey. Well, obviously, as you documented there, you've done very well, and it's all starting from you putting yourself out there and putting the effort in, But just a quick aside, actually, when I discovered the Joe Budden podcast maybe 2 years ago or something, I went to find out more about Rory and Mol and stuff, and then I actually came across one of your podcast episodes. I'm pretty sure it is with Rory, and that's how I first saw you, but I wasn't aware fully until, I don't know, maybe a couple months after I'd kind of discovered you in esports and such. That's when I put the two together and realized you were doing the same thing, and I was like, oh wow, I didn't know anybody else who kind of straddled both lines there. So I've been watching that podcast and listening to that podcast for a long time, and went all the way back, and I don't know how many Joe Budden podcasts is on now, probably 330 episodes or something. But yeah, just I discovered yourself through that, but never put two and two together and realized that was happening. So how long have you been doing the Grassroots podcast now?
So, wow. Oh my gosh. I guess the Grassroots podcast, we've been doing it for almost 3 years. So yeah, Joe and Rory were some of our early episodes, because my business partner for the podcast, Brandon Hall, he is used to do hype men work for Joe and them. He's friends with them. Yeah, and so we created this because we both have experience in the music industry, and he has 10 years of experience in the music industry, and we felt like there was not really a space for artists and people of that of that ilk to be able to talk freely about things without it being chopped and screwed and edited and all that stuff. And so we started that. And I have to admit, looking back at the old episodes, oh my gosh, like we were so trash, but we got so much better at it. And that doing that podcast actually helped me become better as a broadcaster, which was really great. And so we've interviewed so many different people. Our podcast was the podcast that broke the news about Kanye executive producing all of Good Music's projects.
Yeah.
We broke that news. We broke the news of Method Man and Redman not being in How High too. Redman is a good friend of ours, and he broke it down. And then we had the episode with Redman and Method Man talking about the cannabis industry and stuff like that. And so we've had a lot of dope interviews with people that we know, and also just people that we don't know that we're super comfortable on our podcast, but you wouldn't know because we have a good way of making people just feel calm and collect. And you would think that we know these people all along, but we just met them that night.
Yeah.
And so with Grassroots, it's been interesting because then we went from having to be focused in on just celebs, and then people were like, we want to hear your guys' opinions. We want to hear your guys' opinions. So we're like, okay, cool. So we started like just slowly doing our own episodes and then having our own opinions. And then now, like, we've been growing that side of things, and people have been enjoying the fact that they, want to hear our own opinions on certain matters and things like that. So it's been interesting that just the growth we've had. We've also did our first live show at WeWork with Jinx. We did our first gaming event with Nate Robinson with 368 Minorities in Sports as partners. And it's been amazing how we've been able to melt the worlds of gaming and culture and music and sports together all in one, because that's who we are. Like all my friends on the podcast, we're all gamers.
Yeah.
And we're all nerds too. Like we're massive Marvel fans, we're massive gamers. And we naturally, we also are big fans of hip hop and music, and we just found a way to have our own platform where we can just bring everything together and talk about these things. And so it's been quite a journey. It's been up and down, but for the most part, it's been tremendous, and it's helped us in so many different ways to secure different opportunities and different things like that.
Yeah, so that's great. And yeah, I just wanted to mention the little story there about like how I watched you then but wasn't aware of it until later on when I kind of went back again. It's wild to me that So now obviously you're at Cheddar Esports, and we discussed a little bit beforehand, and I've been on the show a couple times now, and you've reached out yourself, which I don't know if that is always the way that happens when like a host or presenter is doing that on other shows and such. So like it seems as if you're wearing multiple hats. So like what's your ultimate role? Like what are you in charge of, and what do you have a hand in at Cheddar, and kind of how did that come about? How did you end up hosting an esports show?
So how it started was at the time, the NBA with their esports league, NBA 2K league just started. They asked, I was covering the league, and then they asked me to be a co-host along with my friend Jeff Eisenman for their Twitch show called The Post Up.
Yeah.
And from there, that's when I started my hosting role. Because before then, I just did stuff behind the scenes. And it's funny because around that time, I was like, okay, how do I make myself different, right? How do I make myself unique? And that's when I cut my hair. And I've never had short hair in my life until then. And so I was like, okay, let me figure out how to, be different, zhuzh it up a little bit. So I did that, but oh my gosh, when I first had my short hair, I struggled. I didn't know how to wear or whatever, but I figured it out. And so from there, I ran into one of our producers, Brandon, at Red Bull Conquest in DC. I was covering that. That's when I also met some other individuals in the esports scene, like Amanda Stevens and Tasty Steve and a few other FGC people. And with that, I told him, I was like, hey, if you guys are looking for anyone to help host in terms of your esports and gaming show or just anything over at Cheddar, let me know. So a couple weeks later, got hit up, did the screen testing and did the script writing, and they loved it. They loved what I had. And then Jimmy Mondel, who's my former host, co-host, we did a little chemistry test for like a few weeks, and then I got the gig. And from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And Jimmy and I were really helping with bookings because we don't have a booker for Cheddar Esports. And so we ourselves had to reach out. Everyone on the team has to reach out to different people to book. And I mean, I feel like that's just how it is across esports in general, because people are still learning about esports, more so from a mainstream media perspective, and they aren't completely buying into it entirely yet.
Yep.
And so, of course, you're going to start with smaller teams. And so with that, I have so many different responsibilities. Like, I'm not just hosting, I'm also producing segments. I'm also booking. I'm also working with our social media guy to figure out, like, okay, how do we promote certain guests and stuff like that? So it's a lot, not always the greatest, but it does allow me to develop these personal relationships with people in the esports scene, whether it is the actual talent, players, PR, people from different businesses. And so, and I'm that kind of person where even if we did have a booker, I would still reach out, because relationship building is so crucial, especially from a media perspective in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And the more solid the relationship, the more opportunities that you can have, whether it is with interviews or just anything like that. And so that is basically my full responsibility with Cheddar Esports, as well as how I got into it. It's funny because I spoke to various different people in the industry, and all of them were like, they just naturally fell into their role within esports and gaming. Like, it wasn't like they woke up one day and was like, oh, when I get older, I'm going to get this.
Yep.
I did not say to myself, when I get older, I want to work in esports and gaming. I never thought that. It's just something that was fitting to who I am, because I've always been a gamer all my life, and I watched competitive gaming. But once the opportunity came with, like, hey, you want to host an esports and gaming show? I was like, sure. So that's kind of how it happened. I just fell into it, to be honest.
And how the hell do you decide who to have on? Because, I mean, you've had me and both my arch nemesis, Kevin, hit on. So, like, what's the process you go through to kind of decide, yeah, this will be a person who's apt at speaking on a particular subject, Because, I mean, I myself, I don't know if I'm always the best judge of character. I tend to not trust people until they give me a reason to trust them, which is obviously a really bad way of doing things, okay? Like, especially if I'm, like, booking people. But, like, so how do you go about doing that?
I mean, for the most part, I do my research. When I book, I put my producer cap on, right? I figure out, okay, there are specific topics, there's specific, obviously competitive leagues. And I'm like, who are the people that are really talking about it, who know what they're talking about? So I work to find these particular individuals that I see are consistently discussing, whether it's Apex, whether it's Fortnite, whether it's Overwatch, and then figure out, okay, how are people reacting to their content? Do they agree with them? Do they not agree with them? And then usually what we do is I'll take a chance on someone, even if they're not, like, because there are people who are just not used to being on camera. It doesn't mean that they're not knowledgeable. They're just not used to being on camera.
Yep.
And so I'll reach out and we'll work with them. But the most important thing is having the appropriate information. So I always do research in advance. I always look up the person on social media. I make sure that they're not saying anything crazy. Gotta make sure they don't have anything racist out or anything like that. And I work to get them on. Also, another thing too is I also listen to other people in the industry. And especially, like, I have, there's certain friends that I have that I really respect their opinions, and they'll be like, hey, you should have this person on your show. You should have this person on your show for, talk about FGC stuff. You should have this person on your show to talk about this. So I pay attention to that, and I definitely take those into account. It's a really interesting process, because with this, not only do you have to have content that's timely in sense of, like, okay, what are people talking about right now? But also for Cheddar, we're not the ones that are breaking news. We don't break the news. We will talk about the news. We'll talk about the breaking news, and we'll find people that will add more color commentary to the news.
Yeah.
But then also we focus in on the culture side of things. So highlighting the different owners of companies, highlighting different indie devs, highlighting people of color, highlighting LGBTQ plus people, showing that there's so much more and there's so many different people behind the scenes in the esports and gaming world. Especially, like, because I've even had people from mainstream side of things, they're like, to be very candid, they're like, where are the other Black broadcasters? Where are the other Black individuals? Now, mind you, of course, these are people who are Black themselves asking this question. Yeah. So for contextual purposes, but me being Black and Latin, they see what I do, but then they look at other broadcasts. They look at other esports broadcast teams. They're like, where are the people of color? And I'm like, we're there. We're getting there as well. Diversity has gotten better in the industry, but that's why I try to highlight other sides, like the fact that we have Johanna Faries as the commissioner of the Call of Duty League,
Yep.
and then we have Nicole LaPointe Jameson as the CEO of Evil Geniuses. It's like, no, we're in these positions, but it's obviously it's not as much, right? So I try to showcase all these different things and highlight the culture side of things, and so that is also another determining factor from who I select for the show.
Okay, that makes sense. So would you say that a really divisive person has more of a chance than someone who's just agreed upon on everything they say?
I want to say that. I would say, look, we have everyone from Troy Tuttle on our show to Slasher. Those are like two completely different personalities, right? Slasher is just doesn't care what anyone thinks. He's going to say what he wants to say, right? Even if he says like, yo, Cheddar sucks, even though, he loves us, but he even says that on our show, right? Then you have like Troy Tuttle, who's like very, very, very specific, very straightforward with Fortnite content. And you can tell that he's even aware of how he frames his words and stuff like that. So for me, it's not necessarily about, are you controversial? Are you divisive? Or are you agreeable? For me, it's more so like, do you have a good standing opinion in the sense of that you have your opinion, you're knowledgeable about whatever you're talking about, you put the knowledge behind that opinion, and then you say your opinion, and you're going to say it with conviction, right?
Yeah.
It's not, we don't want people who are like, oh, maybe. So no, if you think that this competitive scene is going to fall apart in 2 years, then just say that, right? If you're going to say like, I don't think this person is going to win the Fortnite World Cup, it's going to be this person. We want people who have those opinions to be very straightforward with those opinions, especially considering like technically myself and whoever is another host, technically like we shouldn't be as opinionated, even though naturally I'm going to say my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm saying the nicest way as a host, but I will say my opinion. But we really bring guests on to be that voice to really say what they need to say and say what the industry needs to say, and also say what mainstream and non-endemic people need to hear. And so we don't, at the end of the day, as long as you're not racist, sexist, or just outlandish, like beyond measure, like then we're okay with you coming on Cheddar Esports.
that makes sense. So you mentioned Slasher. I just want to tell us, I don't think I've ever said it publicly before, but I've met Slasher once. I was in New York last year, and this is when I realised that I quite like him. I say quite like him, right? So I work for Esports Insider, and we host business events as well as having the publication editorial side of things. And so yeah, I was in New York, and it was like the pre-event drinks where it was just on some rooftop somewhere, which is seemingly commonplace for New York, which is very strange to me, but I like it. And yeah, he walked up to me and went, "You're a bitch," and I was like, "What?" He was like, "You're a bitch." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Oh, you didn't come up and say hi to me." And I said, "Mate, I've saw you 2 minutes ago and you've been talking to someone the entire 2 minutes. I've literally just come in here to get a drink." And he was like, "Yeah, but you're a bitch for it." And I was like, "Okay, he's at least he's consistent with how he is online to how he is offline, and I really like that. And I mean, I'm up for a laugh anyway, so it's just interesting. But yeah, it's just a personal anecdote I've got there that I've never actually said in public before. Yeah, he just straight up called me a bitch. We was aware of each other beforehand, and I was just like, that's a very interesting way of introducing yourself. Either he's like the most socially awkward person ever, and he has to be abrasive from the start, or he is just a living meme. And I mean, yeah. I will not comment on which one I think it is.
Slasher. He is just himself, and that's what I respect about Slasher. It's just he's literally just himself, and I think that's so important, especially in this industry. Is just be yourself, and of course, you got to figure out when to tone it down, when to pick it up, or anything like that. But Slasher has always been nice to me, so I'm 100% cool with Slasher. I like him as a person. Does he sometimes amp things up a little bit? Yeah, he does, but he's also is supportive, and also he's really passionate about the scene, and I think that it's good to have someone like that to be passionate, to speak up, and not be afraid to call out different publishers and companies when they need to be called out.
I agree. So I want to touch on Cheddar a bit. So I've tuned in quite a lot. I'll be completely honest. Not every day. I cannot commit to that. I've barely got time to go see family and stuff sometimes. So I mean, I can't commit to watching a show every day. But so it seems like you definitely do like blend gaming into the show. But it is Cheddar Esports. So I'm just wondering what your take is on that, because I've got the unpopular opinion that esports is used as like an umbrella term for way too many things sometimes. And I'm not saying Cheddar's responsible for that by any means, but I'm just saying like influencers a lot of the time like banded in with esports, and they're not related at all. They just play games on a stream, and maybe they used to compete, like Shroud, for example. He's got nothing to do with esports now, and Ninja. But still, they're kind of seen there, and it almost misrepresents what esports is in my eyes, at least. And I know that's an unpopular opinion there, where it's just like people are like, no, it can be whatever it wants to be, and all these things kind of work into the ecosystem of esports. So what's your take on that, on blending gaming in with the esports side on the show?
Well, I think that more specifically for the show, I think having that gaming component is a way to bring in casual viewers, to bring in casual gamers, so then they don't get completely turned off. I think, so for us, it's like, if we were so esports heavy, right? And if we were able to talk in the terminologies that other esports or people just aware of the esports world understand, casual viewers would be like, what is this? I have no idea what you're talking about, right? I think that using gaming allows like to ease people in, and then we are able to talk about esports, right? Usually with our headlines, we talk about esports, but we also talk about some gaming stuff too. And some of but another thing that we do is the gaming news that we talk about usually impacts the esports world, right? So it's not like it's not like certain times we deviate completely away from esports. Now, are there some times we do on Cheddar Esports? Yes, but the headlines is that opportunity for us to kind of bring in those casual people and walk them through certain things. And then like the interviews after can be, let's the Overwatch League, or we can have someone talk about the Apex Global Series, or just anything like that. And so I think having that balance, at least for us, can work. I know, for hardcore esports people, there may be like, we just want to focus in on just one game and that's it. And I think that that's something that people are trying to figure out. And I think that's also something like we're still figuring out on our own. But I do think that people are mixing and blending esports and gaming. Like when it comes to streamers and stuff like that, I do see that. And especially for people outside of the industry and how they look in, they think that it's all the same, and it's not. Like, yeah, there's this big umbrella of called gaming, and then there's esports under as a subcategory within it, but they have similarities, but they're not always the same. And so I think that it's good to have that distinction between what's gaming and what's esports. But I also think it's important to utilize the gaming component to slowly introduce more people to the esports side and to bring them over. And the journey of converting casual viewers, casual fans over, there has to be a journey pathway. And I think that starting with the game itself, or starting with gaming and just slowly moving them towards the competitive scene and then being involved in that, I think it's super important for just the growth of the industry. And of course, we already have people that are just strictly esports, and we have people that are strictly gaming. And it's okay to have people that are bringing both the worlds together, but there has to be that distinction. And that's what we try to do on the shows. We try to let people know, like, this is not esports. This is gaming. So we try to do that for some of our headlines and topics.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, I'm the kind of person who, like, I don't care about any gaming news ever. Like, I'm an esports journalist, and I literally live and breathe esports. Like, it's my whole day. But like, yeah, I couldn't care less for games. I'm like, I don't care about the new Fallout, or I don't care about the new Halo coming out, unless the HCS is partnering with Esports Engine and they're gonna run a full circuit. Like, so yeah, just for me, it's just like I don't like it, but I understand that it almost has to be done. If you look at like Deserto, for example, or Esports Observer are doing a little bit, and that's my complete like competitor. So I'm not shouting them out. I don't think it's a good thing necessarily, but you can see that they're having to do it. So like Deserto covers, what do they call it, like online entertainment, and they're like one of two profitable publications in the entire industry, and that's because they don't just focus on the industry. So it's either clear to me a model hasn't been found yet that makes being completely esports focused like a viable thing as a business, or the esports industry is just not there yet, and we've got to keep chugging away. And on it not being there yet, I want to bring up Jinx. When I think of when I say Jinx, I mean Jinx Esports TV, not Brandon. When I think of a competitor for Cheddar Esports, I automatically go to Jinx. I've written there before, and there's some good people there, some not so good people there. I'll be completely frank, but what I don't think it's going to last too much longer, right? And it's trying to be a 24-hour esports channel. It's got esports in the name, but then most of it is gaming. Like, it's just two people who are relatively popular online, I guess, like playing a game for the first time or something. It's like, well, this is not esports at all. It doesn't reflect anything. Like, why would I ever visit this channel? You know, this is a very long way of me asking, do you think like a 24-hour network as such, or channel or something, whether online or you know, on the telly, do you think that's a viable thing right now? And I mean, because I could see, if there's one company I could see doing that eventually, I imagine it would be Cheddar.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about now would be a perfect time, to be honest.
Yes.
But I think that this is the thing. No one has the golden formula. No one has it quite yet, like you said. And I think that people are starting to try to figure that out. I mean, we have Venn is coming up.
True,
There's some other platforms that are looking for that 24-hour esports content. I think that it's also kind of hard just because of how polarizing the content in the industry is for fans and viewers, right? If they're a fan of CSGO, they just want CSGO stuff. They don't give a crap about anything else.
Exactly.
They're just Fortnite. They just care about Fortnite. They don't care about anything else. It's like, how do you create content, or how do you have a network what makes people care about Fortnite and CSGO and PUBG and some of these others, right? No one has figured that out. And it's been difficult. I mean, even for us, it's, you know, we're still trying to figure all that stuff out. And so I think that, you know, and I won't say that 24-hour networks won't work. I think it's just like right now, everyone's just trying to figure out what's the golden formula, what's the perfect way that we can get people to constantly watch and constantly care about what we have.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's understandable because look, esports, even though it's been around for a very long time, from a mainstream media production standpoint, it hasn't been fine-tuned. It hasn't been, you know, it just haven't found it. You know, look, we even had before G4, and I think that formula is still trying to be determined, but no one knows quite yet what is like the right amount of esports, the right amount of this.
Yeah.
So
it's a tricky one. I mean, it's going to take almost a bottomless pit of money to find it at this rate as well. I think it's obviously not cheap to create things and launch such ventures, and then like how long do you wait while investing before you pull the plug if it's not successful? You know, it's certainly a challenge in that way. And I mean, there's a long way to go for esports publications as well. I'd say finding the right way of presenting things and the right style of coverage. I don't think we're there yet. I think Deserto. Yeah. I defend Deserto more than most because people will rag on it for the content it produces, and while 95% of it, like, I will never ever read, I probably read 1% of what they put out, if that. Like, I understand why they're doing what they're doing, and it's commercially viable for them to do it that way, though. Yeah. It doesn't please everyone, but then I don't know if your content has to. It only has to please the people at the right time, you know, when it's the content that applies to them. It's a tricky one, and we're all trying to figure it out. Like, I'm finally getting into the groove of trying to grow Esports Insider, and then coronavirus comes up and no one's announcing anything anymore, and everyone's busy at home with family and stuff instead of wanting to be interviewed. And I don't know, it's a really tricky one now, and the environment we're in now and the climate we're in now seems to be stunting quite a bit of growth, I think. And I think a lot of companies will really feel the heat. I mentioned this to you prior to recording, but like Allied Esports released its financial results for 2019 and bragged about like huge revenue growth and such, and then laid off at least 4 people yesterday at the time of recording this. It's a very strange one. So I feel like I'd be remiss to not ask how, like, the coronavirus situation and the outbreak and such, how is that affecting you? Because I mean, I think we need to highlight just how much of a struggle it is for people who are perhaps self-employed or freelance or even got a full-time job, who are now having to work from home, and work's kind of dried up, like with the event side doing what it's doing at the moment, or lack of event side almost. How's the effect on you on that? It can't be easy, right?
I mean, the effect obviously is Cheddar Esports went dark indefinitely, which means that I'm out of work. I am unfortunately the only person on my team who's out of work. The rest of the team are producers. But it's been, I mean, things have been working out. There's various people in the community have reached out that want me to do hosting work and content work and stuff like that. So I'm very fortunate. And that kind of goes back to just the good work that I do, the relationships I built. So people have been really supportive in that. So it was hard, but slowly but surely, you know, I'm finding certain opportunities to just keep myself comfortable right now. And I know, you know, there are plenty of other freelancers that are having a hard time right now. And one thing I'm doing is, you know, if there's any work opportunity that I just don't see myself doing or I can't do, because there's a fine line between like, you know, of course there's certain companies that you may want to work with me, but like I can't have my journalism ethics be ruined. And so I can't do certain jobs. So I may pass them off to some other people that I know that are looking for work, right? But it's kind of an interesting experience, because now that I'm not doing Cheddar right now, I'm actually able to do work with like different esports orgs and stuff like that. And I'm in contact with a few people in terms of doing some kind of content. So it's interesting, because it's like because of my journalism ethics, I wasn't able to really do work with them unless it's like they want me to host something like Gen G. They had me come and host a panel at my alma mater because they're partnered with them. So I did that. But, you know, if it's something else, you know, I can't quite do. So now, because I am not doing my journalism work with Cheddar, I can do certain projects and do certain work with different people that I couldn't do before. So it's a catch-22 in a sense. And it was hard at first, but like I said, I've had people reach out to me because I put out there, I said, hey, Cheddar is dark. I don't have a job right now. I don't have work. You know, is anyone looking for anyone for work? I had a lot of people hit me up. And so it's been good in that way. But I definitely want to try to use what the platforms and things that I have to help other people in this situation. Like I think there's one job that I'm going to be connecting my friend with, because she got laid off, and there's going to be a lot of people that laid off. And I think that more importantly right now is that we just got to find a way to help one another and really, you know, if there's an opportunity for some work for someone, like we just got to help each other, because that's the only way that we're going to stay afloat. And especially that's the only way that we're going to stay afloat in this economy too. Is like, we're going to have to work, we're going to have to spend money, like, or if not, it's going to be worse. So that's been my experience. The first 2 days were crazy hectic, and I was just like, oh my gosh, but it's been like a lot calmer, a lot of phone calls, literally every single day I'm on a phone call, which is funny because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like phone calls.
Right.
But you know, I do it anyway. And but yeah, that's been pretty much my experience during this time.
I was the same in terms of phone calls, right? You and then one day what happens is you go from someone who would rather just text and email and get it out of the way into someone who only likes to communicate via calls, because you can carry on doing other shit at the same time. You bang your AirPods and then you're away. Like one day it just kind of switches and you're like, oh shit, I've become one of those people. But since we mentioned Joe Budden earlier, I just want to bring up something quickly. I assume you've thought about it a little bit, but do you ever see yourself having your own like network of things? Obviously you got the podcast going on and you've got your producing hat and such. Like you can obviously do quite a bit, and you know what goes into creating shows and hosting shows and stuff. So obviously he's got like the Pull Up, which is an interview series, and then the Joe Budden podcast where he's just bullshitting with friends, and there's the cartoon thing going on, and as he's State of the Culture on Revolt and such. Could you see yourself doing something like that in the future, like wholly owning your own kind of network in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, so funny enough, once I get older, I do want to work behind the scenes and be like an executive producer. It would be cool to have my own network, but if not, be a higher up at a network. That's like something that I'm very interested in doing. Like the same way that we've seen people like Oprah or even Lala like go from being in front of the camera and then eventually working their way back. That's
Yeah.
something that I want to do. And but obviously not until like much later on. I'm still young. I'm still kicking it. Even though in the esports world, I'm old.
So am I
But
now.
I know it's crazy. But I look young enough that I can still pass, so it's all
You look
right.
younger than me, and I'm younger than you, so there you go. You're not doing too bad.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not too bad. But yeah, I think that I definitely want to do that at some point, and I definitely want to have my own company at some point, even if it's like consulting with different brands
Yeah.
or media companies for content, especially within the esports and gaming world. And so that's something that I want to do later on, but probably when I'm like in my 40s or something like that.
So you're saying you want to be an esports consultant? Because I mean
Oh God,
that's a.
I call myself that.
Cause I mean, I don't know. You'd either have to knock Slasher off the number one top spot as such, or you'd have to call yourself the number two esports consultant, which doesn't have the right ring to it, And plus, I reckon I want to battle with you for that. I want to battle in say 10, 15 years. I want to battle for number one esports consultant. Let's see who can get it done. Unfortunately, it'll be you over me. I know that already. I say unfortunately, it's good for you. It's unfortunate for me from a selfish standpoint. But so I want to talk about something that you at least appear, which I'm sure it's obviously genuine, like very interested in and passionate about, which is diversity, right? In the esports landscape, more specifically. I'm a white man with a bald head and a beard who looks like every other white man with a bald head and a beard, So I'm not the best person to kind of speak on diversity and what we should do. I haven't faced the challenges that a lot of other people have. Though I'm not saying it's been a complete like easy ride for me. There's obviously stuff that's come up, but what do you think about the current state of esports in terms of diversity? And that's a very like generic question, but I mean, if you look at how it is right now, I don't think it's as bad as what some people are saying. From what I can see, maybe it's because I just know more people behind companies and organisations and such, so I'm actually more aware of the people who are occupying the top spots. As you say, we've got Nicole at EG and there's Trisha at FlyQuest, and there's so many people now, which is a really good thing. And I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as some people say. Obviously, stuff needs to change, perhaps. I don't know what. So, like, where do you stand on it all? Because, as I say, I'm not, like, the best person to speak on this, I don't think.
I would say that it's gotten better in terms of diversity. I can admit that. I think it's good to start with the pros. Like, it has gotten better with diversity. I mean, we're seeing people in positions that, a couple years ago, a while ago, that we didn't see, right? But there's still a problem. And I would say, like, various people who've come on to Cheddar Esports or just talk about diversity inclusion. It's less of the diversity aspect right now, and it's more the inclusion.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can include different people with different backgrounds, people of color, different orientations, all that stuff in the company. But if they're not part of the decision-making process, then it doesn't make sense, right? And then that's when we get like insensitive situations and things like that. We've seen it with brands before. We've seen it in other industries. So I think it's important that we have these different perspectives and different voices and different faces when it comes to gaming, to make sure that people aren't creating characters or scenarios that are insensitive, or having the appropriate narratives for characters, depending whatever they are, whatever their background or orientation or anything like that. Even when it comes to CEO positions, a lot of CEO positions, there's a lot of white men. It would be good to see even that diversify, because if you have everyone being the same thing, and when I say same thing, the same background, it's not going to help the industry grow in multi-directional ways. The more diverse the perspectives, the more diverse the voices, the more diverse the people, as well as those who are in higher positions, listening to those who have a different perspective and different background than them is so important. We've seen, especially when it comes to video games, just the depiction of people of color or just different characters has improved over time and adds more complexity and layers to them. When like Street Fighter was notoriously having some problematic characters and levels in the past. So it's been progressive. It's been getting better. But I think inclusion is the thing that needs to get better, including people at the table, including more diversity on broadcast. Not to say that those who are on broadcast, they've earned their spot, right? They're knowledgeable. But I think it'll be good to find ways to diversify the people on it, you know, and especially if we're trying to tackle these issues of like still racism and sexism within esports. You gotta sometimes, you know, sometimes people are like that because they're ignorant, right? There's a difference between ignorance and racism. But I think that including different people with different backgrounds into the broadcast teams, the production team, the business side is so important for this industry to continue to grow and thrive, and to make sure there's no, you know, problems and issues with like streamers, pro players screaming the N-word and like, oh, it's crazy. You had people who, you know, worked in the higher positions in those companies, who have different backgrounds. They'll be able to, you know, it may help. Not always, you know, some people are just racist and will just say it no matter what, or they're just being stupid, right? But it's important to include these different backgrounds and different individuals in order to grow. If you have the same like-minded people in one room, you're going to get the same results. If you have differing minded people and people who come from different backgrounds, there could be more diverse results and more diverse options and more diverse solutions to some of the problems that we have.
Okay, and if someone was to say that 100% we should have equality of opportunity, but equality of outcome is not necessarily a good thing, like what would your stance be on that? Like, because obviously, well, I say obviously, I've seen some people say that we need X amount of black people in a room as well as X amount of white people and X amount of female and male and such. And I mean, like, I don't know, I feel like mandating like inclusion in that way, where you're forcing people into seats or people out of seats and such, it's a bit of a tricky one. So yeah, what would you say about making sure like there's equal opportunity for all, but not equal outcome for all? So everyone can have a shot at an interview and get in these positions, but it's up to how they perform and how apt and adept they are at what they're doing as to the opportunities that arise.
And this is the thing. I don't think that people should force it, right? Because then you're fulfilling the quota, right? It's not about fulfilling the quota. Mm-hmm. It's about putting people who have the credibility, who are great at what they do, and giving them the opportunity to showcase that, as well as having them be part of those discussions to help with fixing certain things within your company and the industry itself. I'm not someone who is like, oh, you have to have a black broadcaster. No, but I think that it's important to have someone who is different because it gives you a additional view. For example, right, when Ninja said that Drake made gaming cool, you know, that was a time where I came up and said, no, that's not true. As a rapper, he did not make gaming cool. There's so many other rappers that make gaming cool. Mm-hmm. He helped elevate Ninja. But, you know, what about Def Jam Fight for New York, Def Jam Vendetta, or even the Wu-Tang Clan's fighting game, which set the precedent and set the tone for Def Jam. And there's even people like Lupe Fiasco, who's heavily involved in the fighting game community. You even have T-Pain. So it's like there are some people that don't know that, but you can't speak on something that you don't know. And so having these diverse perspectives, even from a broadcast standpoint, will give more information and knowledge. Like I really loved my friend Malik Forte. I really love how he finds a way to integrate culture into the conversations he has on Twitter. I love the fact that he speaks from the perspective of a Black man when it comes to things in the industry, more so now. You know, obviously, you know, I'm sure because when he worked for the Overwatch League, you know, I'm sure he was limited in terms of what he could talk about. Yeah. But him and I have had some great conversations. And then even now he's speaking up, using his platform to speak up on these things. I think it's important to have that, like I said, those diverse perspectives. Of course, when you can find the person that does a great job, and there are people that do a really great job, you know, I'm someone who represents Black and Latinas and, you know, even the LGBTQ community. You know, I recently put out a post about myself because I thought it was so important to have that representation for these underserved communities, and being someone who represents that and is a role model for those who are looking to do broadcasts and stuff like that. And so I think that like with that, there are people who do a really great job. It's just, it's like letting them have the opportunity to showcase it. And then if they show that they're really good at what they do, then putting them in positions where they're part of the important conversations, the important decision making, the important broadcasts. Because or behind the scenes, like, being producer, that's super important too. So doing that is super important. Obviously find the right people and allow people to highlight and showcase themselves, but just giving them the opportunity when it sees fit. And if they're the right ones, then let them be the right ones.
No, that makes sense. And I've actually just thought about something I never really thought about before, and I don't know if this is an indictment on me, but like I've not once, so as I say, I think I'm on episode 17, this is the 17th episode of the podcast, right? And not once have I sat down and gone, right, I need to make sure I've got a really good mix of people from all backgrounds here. What I've done is I've picked an area that I want to discuss, and then gone, right, this person excels in that area. Let me see if they're interested in coming on, right? And it just so happens that I've got a good mix of people, right? But should I be doing that? Because if somebody isn't being given the opportunities to prove themselves, but they are actually really, really good in a particular area, but say then, I don't know, just they're not a white male, who has the opportunities that we have sometimes. Like, should I be going out of my way more to find people who perhaps just haven't had their big breakthrough yet? Or do I just stick with what I'm doing? I've never really been conscious about who I'm picking in that sense, which I think is a good thing, because I've never really categorized people. I've just seen people as people, and pick people within the wider range of people, like the wider range of people that we are. Like, I've never categorized it. So am I doing something wrong? Should I be more considerate about like who I get on?
It's just being more aware. I don't think that, it kind of goes back to, you have the two extremes, right? You have the extreme of people who are just very judgmental. And then you have the extreme where, people may say, oh, I don't see color, but that's not the society that we live in. Like, color and status and who you are is judged, right? So we can't be complacent when it comes to that. I think that it's important to have that awareness. Like, maybe if you're noticing that, like, if you're constantly interviewing people and you're seeing that they're white men, maybe be like, okay, maybe let me find a woman who can speak on this. Let me find someone who's Latin. It's important to do that. That's the one thing I've noticed when I was doing Cheddar Esports bookings, right? And listen, I'm not saying this, I'm not bashing white men.
Go on, bash me. I probably deserve it.
I'm not bashing people like that. It's just something that we have to be more aware of. Like, for example, I noticed when I was starting to book Women's History Month guests, and I put out a tweet saying, hey, do you have any, great people? I've noticed that a lot of people that were recommended were white women. And not to say that that's a bad thing, right? Those women are great at what they do, and they deserve the credibility. But I also thought it was interesting where I'm like, how come there weren't that many Latin people? How come there weren't that many knowingly LGBTQ plus, or even like people of Asian descent? It was a little smaller. People who are Black, it's something that I've noticed, and I don't think that people are intentionally doing it. It's just shows you that there's still something that needs to be worked on in the industry. That's all it is. Right. I'm not saying that people are racist for saying that. I'm not saying that people are judgmental. It's just a pattern that we've noticed. And even when I've been booking for Cheddar Esports, it's a pattern that I've continuously noticed, right? And that's why I made sure, like for Black History Month, I made sure that 1 to 2 guests a day were Black. Mm-hmm. I made sure for at least until things stopped for Women's History Month that there was diversity amongst the women selected every week. I think that it's important for us to put a little bit extra work to make sure that we show that there are other individuals in this industry who have different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and everything like that. I think it's important for us to do that. I think, of course, you're getting all these credible people who know their knowledge, or who know the knowledge of whatever they're talking about, and that's very important, right? Credibility and knowledge, super important. But also, I think it'll be good if you just slowly, in between, give some people chances, give some people who have different backgrounds chances, because you may be surprised. I've honestly have brought guests on that weren't as big as some other guests, and honestly, I felt like they were more knowledgeable than some of the big guests. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it just shows you that it doesn't matter how many followers you have, right? You super knowledgeable and talented, and you just need that opportunity to shine. I think it's important that we do have those moments where we give people opportunity to shine, even if it's 10% of the time, if it doesn't work 10% of the time, I mean, that's 10% compared to 90%, right? It doesn't hurt.
No, that's fair enough. So just so quickly, I think I've seen a positive upturn in inclusion and such, and I for one obviously hope it continues. So do you think you do agree that we've been doing better as an industry, but there is more work that can be done, just to kind of wrap that up?
Yeah, the industry has improved, but we still got some more work to do. And it's not just this industry, it's every industry.
Exactly.
Every to improve. We got to grow, we got to thrive, or else, the industry, I wouldn't say the industry will die, but the industry will just not progress as much or as fast as we would hope so.
And we're in a unique position anywhere where you can be anyone and be good, it's an online industry for the most part. I mean, it should be a lot more welcoming than other industries, though hopefully there is a level playing field across all. Eventually, what I want to do is, because we're getting towards the hour mark, we've both got things to do. I don't want to keep stealing your time too much longer. I just want you to just plug yourself, basically. Coronavirus is hitting. Go on, do it. Plug yourself. Go for it. It's all yours.
So, you can find me on all social media platforms. Erin A. Simon, ERIN, the letter A, and then Simon, SIM as in mother, ON as in Nancy. You can find me on Facebook and also my YouTube channel with Erin Ashley Simon. You'll probably come across some of my old interviews if you type my name in. So I hope you enjoy those, because it's a little bit cringeworthy watching them. And then also you can go to my website, www.erinAsimon.com. If you would like to contact me, there's a contact section. And email me, whatever, chat with me via Twitter. I'm open to chatting with whoever.
And you're going to be streaming more from now on, right? For the foreseeable at least.
Twitch.tv/Erin A. Simon. I'm trying to stream every single day and have guest streamers too. So
there we go. And what games are you playing at the moment, just quickly before I wrap this up, because I'm interested on how much I should judge you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I play a lot. I play Overwatch. I play Call of Duty.
Respect.
I play Rainbow Siege.
Respect.
I play Persona 5. That's something I'm trying to finish, but oh my God. Such a long one. And then I actually want to do a stream where I play Overcooked with my friends, because I told them that it's one of the hardest games that I've ever played, and some of them don't believe me, and so we're all going to get frustrated together.
Well, there we go. So everyone tune in. Go follow Erin. You probably already are, let's be honest. She's very popular, especially compared to me. So, that's what it is. Oh, thank you for taking the time to speak to me. I'm sure everything will kind of figure itself out soon. And you'll be inundated with work and be wishing you had some time off again. I hope that's the case for you at least. And I'll obviously still be supporting from the sidelines and doing what I can that way. And I'm going to try and be more mindful about the podcast and stuff. Though I have had a good mix of people, I'd say unconsciously, I will be a bit more mindful, and that's something we can all take away from it, I guess. Just be more aware and more mindful of what's going on. So thank you for watching and listening to everyone who's tuned in. Every Tuesday this goes out. I've been rather consistent. I don't plan on stopping anytime soon, so I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you again. Cheers.